Oh, hello everyone. What's up? Welcome to another edition of Culture Binge, the Wisecrack podcast, where we get into everything going on and hopping and bopping within the zeitgeist. I am Michael, and I am here with Wisecrack writer Alec. Alec, how you doing?
Hey, how's it going?
And Wisecrack researcher extraordinaire Serby. Serby, what's good today?
Hi.
Hey. Well, happy Earth Day, first of all. Delayed happy 420 to any cool kids out there. We're excited to be back. Is anyone doing anything that's Earth Day related? Are you celebrating nature in any way, shape, or form? Or
looking sadly out my window.
Yeah. I guess this would be the Earth Day to just stay inside and appreciate nature from afar. So we have a lot to talk about today. We're going to get into why college is screwed. We might get into why cruise ships are screwed. We'll talk about why thinking is screwed. I'm kidding, and everything's not screwed. We'll talk about some good stuff too. But first, let's get into slaps and chaps. Serby, I think everyone wants to hear from you first. What is slapping and chapping in your life since we've last talked?
So what slaps is Turn Washington Spies on Netflix. It's about a spy ring that takes place during the American Revolution, and I really, really like it. It's so good.
So this is like the AMC show, right, that aired a few years ago when they were still on that like Mad Men and Breaking Bad prestige wave.
Mm-hmm. And it's really good. It's really well done. Like, the acting is good. The sets, like their accents. I feel like I obviously wasn't around during the American Revolution, but if I were, I feel like this is what it's probably like.
Do you find yourself sympathizing with the British as you watch it?
Yes.
Okay, good to know. Good to know.
Wow, now that we know you're a monster, I'm kidding.
Well, I am a citizen of the UK, so gotta represent my roots. What chaps is the Scripps National Spelling Bee is canceled. I watch it every year. I've been watching it since I was maybe like 9, and I would take the week off of school and watch it. My mom was very supportive of this. So I would sit at home and like watch all the little kids, and this continued even when I was in high school, when I was in university, even throughout my job. Like, I would always take the time off and watch the Spelling Bee, and I knew it was going to be canceled, but it's still very sad, very devastating.
That's so sad. I years ago tried to go to one of the live events, and I realized it's harder to get into than you would think.
Really?
Not that I tried to sneak in. That sounds like I tried to break in. I did not try to break in, but I tried to go. But that's really sad, and I'm sorry to hear that. Alec, what's slapping and what's chapping?
Slaps. Fiona Apple put out a new album. It's called Fetch the Bolt Cutters, and it's really good. Everyone should go listen to it if they like that kind of music. As far as what chaps, I finished 2 shows, and I usually reserve most judgment until I finished a whole season. But, and I'm sorry if anyone disagrees, please send me hate mail because I'm curious, but Devs is awful. I think it's incredibly stupid. I think it thinks it's very smart. But I would love to be proven wrong. I don't really have a horse in the race, as they say. Also, Picard is awful. As a lifelong Star Trek fan, it's a bad show. I hope the second season's good. I'm going to watch every single episode, but goddamn, it's bad.
Well, that sucks. I do want to ask any listener or viewer right now to make one of those images where the guy's sitting at the table that says blah blah blah, prove me wrong, and put Alec's face on it and say Devs is terrible, prove me wrong, and send that to us, and we'll put it on the screen. Well, that sucks though. I've heard various things about Devs. I haven't started it yet, and now I might not. So I'm sorry to hear that. Glad to hear about Fiona Apple though. It seemed like it broke the internet when her album came out the other night. Have you heard that album, Serby? Are you a Fiona Apple head?
I believe they go by Appleheads.
Oh, Appleheads.
Sorry.
I don't remember too many Fiona Apple songs. I remember when she first came out and she did that one music video in the bathtub. I liked that song. That was great.
It's a great song.
Nice.
Yeah, I do like her music. I just may not recognize who she is.
Yeah, I would definitely recognize her. Who couldn't recognize Fiona Apple? We'll play a game later where Serby has to pick a Fiona Apple out of a lineup. I'll be really quick with mine. What slaps is the most recent season of the HBO show High Maintenance. I might have talked about that show on here before last season. It's one of my favorite shows on TV. Watch it if you haven't. It sounds like it's dumb because it's about a weed delivery guy who rides around New York, but it's actually this kind of anthropological study into all types of weird people that live in Alex's hometown. So everyone should check that out if you get a chance. They just wrapped up the final season. Not the final season, the most recent season. What chaps is there was an earthquake where I live last night, and I did not like it at all. It was midnight. I was casually watching Netflix, The Circle on the couch, getting ready to go to bed, and all of a sudden the walls started shaking. I would give it a 0 out of 10. Did not enjoy. So that's what chaps. Now we have a lot.
Earthquakes anymore.
You don't know. Oh, I still have not lived in the state of California long enough to think of these as normal or good or not terrifying.
Interesting.
Yeah. So we got a lot to get into, but Alec, before we move on, I feel like you have something special to tell our listeners. So what is it?
Rick and Morty's coming back, and for anyone who likes the Squanch, our Rick and Morty podcast, it is coming back the day after. So May 4th, that's Star Wars Day. After Rick and Morty Season 4, Episode 6, me, Jared, and Ryan will be breaking down the episode. And so you could search Squanch on wherever you find your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever. And if you have thoughts immediately after or possibly before, you could email us at squanch@wisecrack.co or leave us a voicemail at 1-213-534-8807. That's it. Just go do that if you like Rick and Morty and you like hearing us ramble about things.
Yay, Squanch.
Yeah, it's very awesome. You should all be watching the show. You should all be listening to the podcast. Very exciting as always. And, I'll just say this. If you have not watched it in a while and you're excited to get back into it, we've made so much good stuff about Rick and Morty on Wisecrack. I'm so confident in saying that. Just go back, look through the archives, get yourself psyched. It'll be real fun. And then listen to the Squanch. So to get started, I'm going to get into a topic, something that I didn't think I cared about that I realized I cared about this week. And it's magical thinking. Have you heard this term before, magical thinking?
No,
Is it The Secret?
Yes. So I'm going to tell you all how you can change your life through, it's secret-ish. So magical thinking is this term that gets used kind of across the disciplines and the bullshit sciences. So obviously people think that magical thinking means that you can manifest stuff a la The Secret. If you've never heard about The Secret or read The Secret, don't do that. But it's also used in anthropology, psychology, branches of philosophy. Now, I'm most interested in the way that sort of anthropologists and psychologists talk about magical thinking. So I'll say a little bit, and we can talk about why I think it's important right now. But in general, magical thinking is the belief that one's ideas, thoughts, wishes, or actions can influence the course of events in the physical world. Now, a lot of developmental psychologists will say that this is something that all of us do when we're children going through the egocentric stage of development, in which as kids, whether it's believing in Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny, or whether it's I'm sure we've all done this at one point, or maybe just me when you're a kid and you're just like, please let school be canceled tomorrow. I'm so afraid to go in. Can it snow? And then it snows and you're like, this is great. I'm magic if I think things.
Control the universe.
Exactly. Now, that's kind of the fun side of it. Another way that it often gets used by children is in the grieving process. So not to be grim, but, sometimes we're a kid and something bad happens, or our best friend moves, or, grandma passes away, and we might go to bed and just say, I hope when I wake up this was all a dream and grandma's still there. And you wake up and she's not. I didn't mean to make it that grim. I'm sorry if anyone's recently lost someone. But it's a way that children especially can cope with grief, with devastating things that happen in their reality that they're kind of not ready to deal with. So there's two sides of magical thinking. In one sense, it can help us think positively, even if we don't believe that we're able to magically determine reality. On the other sense, it can lead to a sort of delusion and denial. Now, magical thinking has been in the news a few different times recently in terms of how people are responding to, thinking about, and reporting about the COVID-19 crisis. So I've been thinking about this in terms of, I don't know if anyone else has had this experience, but it feels like it was a lifetime ago. But I remember having conversations 6-7 weeks ago where people were saying things like, this isn't that big of a deal. We're going to be fine. It's something like a bad flu that a few of us might get. I looked into it.
Podcast, in fact.
Shit. Delete that one right now. But there's an article that's called The Months of Magical Thinking as the Coronavirus Swept Over China, that was on the website Stat News. And I want to read one quote in it. And this is from Gary Cobinger, the director of the Infectious Disease Research Center at Laval University in Quebec. He said, everyone was in denial of this coming, including the U.S., and everyone got hit, just as simple as that. And in this article, all of these different scientists and journalists describe how only weeks before that hit us really hard, no one was really taking it seriously, even though looking back, every sign was there that everyone should have taken it seriously. And once again, it is what it is, but even in mid-February, this is a quote from the article, Dr. Fauci was describing the risk to Americans as relatively low, saying that he hopes sustained human-to-human spread might not occur in the United States. So we had doctors and epidemiologists telling us it wasn't that big of a deal. I'm sure we all remember as well that fateful day. I know in California it was Friday, March 13th, that they shut things down. And initially, they just shut things down through the end of March. And I think there was this idea initially, and I even fell into this myself. I had, I think it was on April 1st, I had tickets to see this band Wilco play in Los Angeles. And I think of myself as a realist, but I remember thinking to myself, like, this will get figured out. I'll be able to go to that concert in 2 weeks. And of course, now I wouldn't predict that I'd be able to go to a concert in 2020. But I feel like magical thinking has been all around. And of course, we still have, I have friends and people in my life who still say they think this isn't that big of a deal. This week, walking around my neighborhood, I saw people having little porch parties. So I got to thinking about magical thinking in terms of childhood and the way in which children use it to cope with unpleasant things in reality, in particular to deal with the grieving process. And to me, it seems like a decent explanation for both why some of us weren't ready when this started and why many people have not been ready to reckon with exactly what's been happening now. So I wonder, A, what y'all think about this, and B, like, have you found yourself magical thinking? Have you noticed this in the news you're consuming or people in your life? Or is it just me working through my egocentric stage of childhood development as an adult?
I think that's part of it, but I also think, like, I think there's that and something else going on, which is that I think we felt exposed. What happens often in the media is that they will warn us, or public health experts will warn us about disease, and not all of those diseases materialize. And so, God, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but let's say H1N1, which I think still killed like 100,000 people in America, which is terrible, but wasn't, didn't lead to, as far as I know, like the hospital strain and stuff like that. And so, like, growing up, I've been used to SARS, H1N1, hearing about them in the news and never really affecting my life. And that's not to say that it's like, oh, well, like, I don't mean to say there's this weird thing that happens, I think, in public health where you kind of want to scare people, so to take the most extreme measures just to be on the side of caution, because, like, if you're right and everyone just washed their hands a bunch of times, or sorry, if you're wrong and everyone just washed their hands a bunch of times, then, like, whatever, no harm, no foul. Or, there was a swine flu scare, I think in the 60s or 70s, where they vaccinated a shit ton of people, and it never really materialized. There was no outbreak of swine flu. But again, like, I think people look at that and be like, see, the government overreacted and spent all this money. And I'm like, yeah, but I think instead of looking at these things as they were wrong and like, how dare they, or they fucked up, or we shouldn't take these things so seriously, it's just realizing that it's like a numbers game. Like, if you're right half of the time, like, let's say 3 years from now, there's another scare and we all overreact to it. And obviously there's a limit to how far you can reasonably overreact. I'm not talking about like looting stores and going Mad Max, but if like we overreact to that and nothing materializes, I don't think the response should be like, oh, see, we shouldn't have done that. I think it should have been like, oh yeah, like we should play it safe. But also, sorry, back to the point of magical thinking, I think it probably infuses that where if we're given a 50-50 chance, we're going to be like, well, 50% chance that everything's going to be fine.
Yeah, I like that. The idea that even when it creeps in a little bit and lets us believe that everything's going to be fine, or err on that positive side. Serbi, is this something you've noticed?
So I do think I do magical thinking in other ways. I don't think that I did it in relation to COVID. So I've been thinking a lot about why I didn't take this seriously in the beginning. And I think I realized how heavily influenced I am by the media. So when this all happened, I read articles that said, oh, it's just like a flu. Oh, it's not that big of a deal. And then it seemed like all of a sudden everyone was dying. And I was like, wait, like I thought they said this was just like a really bad cold. And I know people die from the flu, but I think my initial understanding was quite poor in that I thought that it wasn't a big deal. I do magical thinking in other ways, but I don't believe that like my thoughts influence reality. I just think that like having a goal, like I'm a very goal-oriented person at baseline. So for me, like I like to envision, like I like to visualize like what I want my life to look like, and then I actively make choices to make that reality come true. So I don't know if that's magical thinking or if that's just having a goal. I don't know.
It sounds like that's like the good version of it, I think, or the helpful use of it. I mean, one weird thing about it right now, and I was earlier today talking to my sister who lives in the state of Florida. Hi to my sister who's never listened to this and probably never will. But we were talking about how we feel like we're living in different realities right now, because in Florida, she even knows a lot of people there who kind of just like aren't taking this that seriously still, who truly think it's not a big deal. She lives in a state where they're talking about next week kind of just opening things back up again. And then, of course, you know, in a place like California, both at the state level and the local level in Los Angeles, people are taking this very seriously. We're still kind of shut down for at least a few more weeks. And it's creating this weird reality in which some people in our country and in the world think of themselves as living through a serious global pandemic that has ramifications that might last for months and years, while others live in a reality where they think it's an overplayed bad flu and they just want to get back to happy hour TGI Fridays and play laser tag. Both things that I would never judge someone for wanting to do. So I think that's one weird effect right now. God, I hope they can open up again. But yeah, so I think that's one thing I'm noticing now as well. It seems like people are using magical thinking to almost live in a different reality than other people, which is creating this weird, almost like epistemological gap where people can't communicate because they're perceiving what's happening in completely different ways. I don't know if any of y'all are seeing that, because I know you're coastal elites and probably don't talk to anyone who's not on the coast like I do, being a man of the people.
I haven't noticed that too much because I live in an area where everyone is taking it very seriously. Like nobody in my neighborhood even ventures outside too much.
Yeah.
Everything is closed. Everyone is quite paranoid. Like nobody wants to. Like people, like if you walk past somebody, like I'll see like people who have dogs walk past each other and they'll like practically sprint across the street to like stay away from each other. So I haven't seen that. I have seen in the news that people in like 20 minutes from me having these like protests, so they all like gather and like protest the stay-at-home order. Do you know the ones I'm talking about that have happened?
I know which one you're talking about. I won't say it because I don't want anyone to find you, but yes. Not far from where Serby lives, people. The best part about the protest though were the people that had like hazmat suits and masks on, who were saying that COVID-19 is a lie. And now one reading of that is they were being performative. Like, wouldn't this be ridiculous if I had to wear a mask to feel safe? But you were still wearing it, bud. So you were not at those protests, Serby?
No, I was not, but I was watching them on the news. And I have been tracking, like, keeping an eye out on the, like, city counters, like, where they say, like, how many new cases have happened this week or this day. And, like, since those protests, the number of COVID cases have shot up. And I don't want to say it's because of these, like, protests, but is it because of the protests?
Wow, it's getting spicy.
I've had a similar morbid fact. So every day I check a website that, like, pulls across the country all this data from health departments to check, like, New York City cases, deaths, etc., and also, like, where my parents live to see where they're doing if they're doing okay. But then... Jacksonville will reopen their beaches, and it won't happen for probably like 5 to 10 days, but I do want to look at those cases.
Yeah.
it's a very morbid hobby since I have nothing better to do.
Yeah, but no, but that's like an example of it, and I think there's something to it. I mean, one day I'm hoping that we can make a long form Wisecrack series on what is Florida and why is Florida. And once again, I say this is someone that lived in Florida. I hate to blow up a spot. Alec has also been a Floridian at some points in his life. I'm sorry to let everyone know that. But I think it's interesting that Florida is the sort of place where a lot of people are just like, no, like I'm in Florida. I need to go to the beach. I can go to the beach. The beach is safe. The water will wash away any virus because it's a cleansing pool. But it's scary to see that. But I do think, in general, I'm just interested in how we are collectively and individually psychologically responding to this, and how we're able to look at a lot of the mechanisms people use to deal with like trauma and loss and grief, and see them on this mass scale as people. And to put myself on blast for this one, I mean, I feel myself grieving the loss of getting to like go to concerts with my friends, or not go on upcoming camping trips, and silly shit like that, that I'm struggling to reckon with. And I think we're all doing this, which is the one thing that makes me not completely judgmental of people that are just like, I gotta surf right now. I know it's bad, but I need to catch some tasty waves. Yeah. So I think we've covered this one good enough. I'll be honest, I have some magical thinking I want to share with you. I want to share with our listeners. My magical thinking, something I want to manifest into reality, is I want our listeners and viewers, who I love so much and who I would, to be casual, die for. I would love if they subscribed to this podcast, to the RSS feed, whether you listen to it on the Apple Podcast app or Spotify, or you just standard RSS feed app that you've made because you're a person who can create your own software. I'd love it if they subscribed. I'd love it if they would rate this podcast. Of course, I want them to rate it well. And my special request is, if you do rate the podcast, which I'd love it if you did it, I would love for you to cast us in a movie. So tell us in a comment, if a movie version of Culture Binge got made, who's playing who? Who do you see as the Alec? Who is playing Serby? And sure, who is playing me? I would love to see that. So please subscribe, please comment, rate, review, and most importantly, let us know who should play us in a film. Does everyone have someone in your mind who you hope people say?
I feel like for you, Michael,
you don't have to say it.
Sorry, Vin Diesel lost a bunch of weight, went like Christian Bale style, and then grew the beard. That's you.
Wow. So, starving to death Vin Diesel with a scraggly beard. I've never felt more complimented. And just so everyone listening knows, as soon as Alex started this, I was like, he's going to say something that hurts my feelings. I just don't know how it's going to hurt my feelings. And he managed to do it. So, while I recover emotionally, Serby, is everything going to be okay with colleges from here on out? So,
I don't
just
think
peachy
so.
keen? No?
No. Let's get into colleges and what's going on with them. So, with all of these lockdowns, universities are quite empty because students are now completing their coursework online. So, this new world has created significant financial problems for schools. They've spent so much money transferring coursework online, training professors, maybe outsourcing to online-only institutions. They've had to purchase new software like Zoom or like Google Classroom, I think. Mm-hmm. And schools have also offered refunds on housing, meal plans, and even parts of their tuition. And now schools can't rely on tuition or revenue from events like athletics or drama productions or other extracurricular activities. Their endowments have taken a cut. And universities are doing hiring freezes. They've announced layoffs, pay cuts, and some are even considering permanently closing campuses. The financial situation becomes even more challenging when you consider that we may not even reopen these schools in the fall. Nicholas Christakis, a sociologist and physician at Yale who's studying the spread of coronavirus, said, "This idea that we can somehow just get back to normal and go back to school in the fall, because we always have, is not reasonable. I think we're going to have to figure out other ways of doing this." So some of the other ways that people are thinking about handling school in the fall is continuing with online education. changing the traditional academic school year from starting in August and September to pushing it to October or January. Another idea is that moving towards a quarter system rather than a 16-week semester system, or even having 4-week flexible courses that move more rapidly. So even if schools reopen in the fall, many schools are wondering, will students even be there? How will the economy impact individuals and their ability to go to school? Will students want to take the risk of living in such close quarters or staying in a classroom with so many students? So my question to both of you, how do you think COVID-19 will change higher education? And do you think schools will find new ways of generating revenue given our new reality?
I actually, completely independent of this, I was talking to two good friends who work, I'll just say, at a large state school in a state that borders Ohio. Don't want to give too many specifics, but they were telling me, as you mentioned, they're not collecting like all the bullshit fees that schools charge you, like the housing fee, the library fee, the university services fee, the printing fee, and I guess that is like millions of dollars already right there. And so, you know, they're tossing around the furlough word and hopefully hiring people back. They're discussing doing half the semester online, like this upcoming semester, and then half in person, but kind of tentatively. So see how everything goes with, you know, safety and everything, and possibly just do all semesters online. But I think the real fear is that, you know, it's a state school, so if you're in state, it's still, I don't want to say affordable, but like cheaper than a lot of other places. If kids are just going to do online, they'll just go to a community college instead to get, especially first year and second year students, they'll get their electives done, they'll do all this stuff and whatever to save a lot of money, which will probably leave the state university screwed. There's also a school that makes a ton of money on sports, which are obviously all shut down. And, you know, I think one thing is, like, obviously a lot of this bleeding money is inevitable, but I wonder, people have been asking questions like, this is a crisis that's putting pressure on the system, and like, what are the weaknesses that's showing? And I don't necessarily want to say that like sports is a weakness. I mean, I don't like how sports work in colleges because they spend millions of dollars paying coaches, building stadiums, instead of like giving people affordable tuition. But yeah, I'm wondering if it's exposing anything there. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I second a lot of what Alex's saying there. As someone, I used to work at universities for quite some time, and I'm so glad that I don't anymore after talking to some friends who are still in that industry, and my partner is a grad student and teaches and stuff like that. I mean, one of the things that I've heard from a lot of friends is that the teaching that's happening right now is just in no way analogous to the quality of the teaching they would hope to have in a classroom setting. So I think one thing that's changed is, maybe in some subjects it works, but I definitely know in the humanities and subjects like philosophy and literature, there's just no way to replicate an in-class experience in an online environment. And of course now a lot of students have had to go home. There's a lot of international students in a lot of universities in the States. So, you know, if you have one student who's in Korea, a bunch that are in the States, a few that are in Germany or something, you know, when are you setting up your class so that everyone can be there? So that's one thing. Another thing, of course, is a lot of parents are not going to want to shell out like $45,000 to $60,000 a year at a private school. That's just some like jackass with a jacket and shorts on getting on a Zoom lecture and talking to their kids. The thing that scares me the most, though, from the perspective of what universities have been doing anyways, is I think this might change, not to be too apocalyptic, higher education forever in how courses are taught. I think some universities are going to start thinking, wow, this is pretty easy. If we just have one person with some digital shit, they can teach a bunch of classes for way less money, and we can probably pay them less along the way. And if that sounds kind of nuts, I mean, the last university I worked for, I'll call it out, the University of the West of England, my colleagues were great, but the administration were blood-sucking monsters who were trying hard to suck all of the marrow out of the intellectual bones of the institution to try to cut money away from us as much as possible to make more money for themselves. And I think that what I saw in my last experience was, they wanted stuff like this. Administrators wanted to look for ways to make it more efficient to teach, to streamline the educational process, to prioritize digital technology as it, assists learning. And I think I've talked about this probably before on this podcast, but I feel like this is where Naomi Klein's sort of disaster capitalism thinking is touching on so many things. And I think we can see this in higher education, how this disaster might get used by universities to cut back on things that are good and streamline things a little bit more. But hopefully I'm wrong.
It's also another great sort of criticism of how universities, public and private, work is in David Graeber's Bullshit Jobs. To your point, he argues that they are this like giant leech upon like actual education that like collect these, six-figure, or, there's like a lot of six-figure administrators. Not to say all the college administrators are bad. Meanwhile, like adjunct professors are making shit money. But one thing that I thought was, well, there's two things, right? One is that people have been calling out, like, I think Harvard is talking about furloughs or something like that. They have a $40 billion endowment. Like, I understand the endowment's important, but could it just go down to 39 billion and like you're okay? Yeah. Like, I'm not saying they have to like remove all of this shit, but the other thing is that one of the things my friends brought up is that the university lost all this money because of the fees, but I was always suspicious of this. I thought fees were for specific things. And so it makes sense, like, but like they were talking about it as if it were revenue, like it actually doesn't cost you this amount of money to run the library. Cause it's not like they're saying like, oh, because nobody's paying the library fee, we can't pay the librarian. They're just saying the university at large is like losing all this money. And I thought that was incredibly interesting.
So, I agree with everything both of you have said. An interesting point about Harvard, not only do they have that like $40 billion endowment, but they also took, I believe, $9 million from the U.S. government as part of the stimulus package. So, fuck Harvard.
You heard it here, folks.
I think that one way that I hope things change is that we get rid of these like library fees and like the student activity fee. Like, what is that? Or like the printing fee. So I hope we get rid of those sorts of things. I think that universities might do more online coursework, the way that Michael said, that we can pay professors less. I think they'll start to offer certificate programs online in order to generate money. I already see that. Like Harvard has this whole like extension studies program. They'll even offer like masters and a bachelor's and all sorts of certificates. But they want to make it very clear that you are not you're getting a degree that's not from Harvard. It's from Harvard Extension Studies. So I think we'll see more of those things. I feel really sad for the people who were looking forward to their freshman year of school, and they won't have those on-campus bonding activities and things like that. I think that'll be very sad, but I suppose it's the new reality for us.
There's nothing like catching chlamydia on Welcome Week after the Baha Men concert and White Claw sponsored mixer on the quad. So I'm sorry that everyone's going to miss out on that.
Is that a true story, Michael?
No, but if I was at campus activities, that's what I would be like. We got to get the Baha Men here, however we can, however much we need to spend. But yeah, no, I agree that I feel bad for those students. I will say this, though. This is going to sound aggressive. I just don't think anyone should pay for college right now. I think anyone who's like, especially if they're taking out loans or paying themselves, like don't go this fall. Defer. Do something else. Like Alex said, in most states, you can take really cheap or free community college classes. You could learn shit online. You could read books. You could just binge Wisecrack content and become a damn genius. Sorry, I'm a company man. But I just can't see how this model moves forward. And I think, Serby, you're right. We're already seeing all of these kind of slimy online course things. I saw someone on Facebook the other day, who I'm not going to name, who was just like, wow, learning a lot in my Yale online course. Did I stutter? Yale. And it's like, dog, you're taking some like half-ass bullshit online course that they're doing to make scraps of money right now. You don't get to like wear your alumni sweater around.
They're going to wear the alumni sweater.
They are. But yeah, it's a weird time. And I think Alec brings up that good point you brought up a while ago too about athletics. Sadly, I think that a lot of universities, their priority isn't going to be how do we get back to a safe and robust learning environment for our students. They're going to get back to how can we play football games and get all of the money from TV networks and fans and merchandise that we need. And I think that we could see a situation where young people are put at risk very quickly so that they can play football. And I think that's going to be a very dark part of the coming fall semester, because I don't think they're going to want to let that go. And I think they're going to jump through dangerous hoops to try to make 19-year-olds risk their life in multiple ways now playing football.
For no money.
For zero money and zero liability as well. A book I was reading this week got into that legally. If these kids get a concussion or, God forbid, paralyzed, the university owes them nothing. It's so good.
If you work at a university or you are an incoming freshman, please write in. I'm very interested in hearing about your thoughts and your experiences and your magical thinking, your fears, your dreams, all of it.
That's great. Yeah. Well, so because a lot of people might not start college this semester, they might have some extra money. One option, of course, is that they create their own semester at sea. They get on a cruise ship, they explore the world, they hit the snack bar. Alec, if I understand this, you are going to talk about the pros and cons of leaving it all behind for a semester at sea and talk about Corona cruises.
I am. Real quick though, can people hear dogs barking in the background? Because I can close my window.
No.
I'm gonna close my window. I'm gonna close my FBI privacy screen, and there's just a quick technical thing that's gonna happen.
So I went to a conference and the NSA, the National Security Agency, was there, and they were pretty funny. They had a cell phone charging station, and they're like, charge your cell phone at the NSA station.
Nope. I thought
it was
not
great.
at all.
Are you guys making fun of the fact I make it so the FBI can't watch me?
No, I'm making fun of the fact that you're trying to act to our listeners like you're not breeding Labradors in your basement right now to make extra money. But, are dogs barking?
A lot of people are adopting animals right now. Listen, it's a crucial revenue stream for Wisecrack. No, I'm just kidding. Please don't breed dogs like that.
Don't let them know that Wisecrack is a front for a illegal dog breeding ring. But back to these cruise ships, I have my cursor right now clicking over purchase for a $4,000 Carnival cruise experience. Do I confirm this? Do I close the window? Tell us what to do, Alec.
Yeah, so my story this week, there was a Bloomberg article. I'm actually going to put the link in the chat right now.
Nice.
For all those live listeners. The title is Carnival Executives Knew They Had a Virus Problem but Kept the Party Going. So this is about coronavirus, but just to set the scene a little bit, cruises are notoriously cesspools of disease. Now, there's a few reasons for that, some of them in peer-reviewed articles. Apparently, one of the abstracts I read said they're cesspools of disease because in general, the people who go to them are older and often suffer from chronic health issues. Because, think about it. You're 60, you got some disposable income, maybe got a heart issue, and you're just going to, spend the last of your money on a cruise. But anyway, there's been a lot of norovirus outbreaks. Norovirus is like a gastrointestinal thing, a lot of diarrhea, possibly puking. It spreads through person-to-person contact, but also through feces. So just like feces particles everywhere. And so there's that. Also, the cruise industry, there's a great article from Quartz about people falling overboard on cruise ships, which, to be fair, the numbers are pretty low, but it's about one a month, except they don't actually keep track or report it, despite the fact that it happens all the time. And one lawyer in the article referred to as imagine if one person a month got a traumatic brain injury from turbulence on a airplane flight. What would people be doing? And this is because on cruises you're just shoving people full of alcohol, and the barriers, the guardrails stopping you are only 39 inches high. And so I'm a tall guy and often see things like that, and I'm like, oh, if I could just flip over that, which people do, and most of them, 80-75% of them, are never found or die or whatever. And the cruise industry just doesn't care. Every time something like this happens, they're like, well, the person was being irresponsible, or they shouldn't have been so drunk, despite the fact that they kept over serving them, and just won't take the slightest of precautions to stop people from like doing this, like a totally preventable, like make the fucking rails higher, don't overserve people, like basic shit like that. But anyway, this is the cruise industry. I'm possibly a little bit biased, but this story specifically is about how Carnival Cruises, just at every step of the way, having lots of good information at their disposal, fucked up their response. So what happened was around March 4th, the cruise announced to passengers that a specific ship was being investigated as a cause of a California outbreak. So, you know, they went to port and caused an outbreak. And all they did after that fact was put hand sanitizer out by all the shops, restaurants, and swimming pools while like people were going to crowded theaters. There's one thing. So this is the day after this. They interviewed some people. Around lunchtime on March 5th, the ship's captain, John Smith, announced all 2,422 passengers need to go to their cabins to shelter in place. Lori Miller was on the Da Vinci dining room eating chocolate peanut butter ice cream. Quote, "Oh my God," she said, she remembers thinking, quote, "This is real." Then she ordered more ice cream. Other passengers ambled to the ship's store and dining areas, too, to take advantage of the perks while they could. There's another quote. "Everybody went to the buffet," recalls 61-year-old Debbie Loftus, who was traveling with her parents. "I just thought, oh crap, the ukulele concert is going to be canceled."
No.
And, I mean, obviously, Carnival's whole thing is like, listen, other people mishandled this. But this wasn't even their first outbreak. In February, they sail around Asia, where this was happening a lot earlier. And there was a COVID case in Hong Kong that they believed that was related to the specific ship. And they functionally like did nothing. So this is another quote from the article. At least 7 more of the company's ships at sea have become virus hotspots, resulting in more than 1,500 positive infections and at least 39 fatalities. It also says in February, one ship accounted for more confirmed COVID-19 infections than any nation except for China.
God damn it. That's
just one ship. Several of the plagued Carnival ships didn't even begin their voyages until well after the company knew it was risky to do so. And then as of early April, Carnival still had passengers at sea, nearly a month after the CDC issued a March 8th public advisory to defer all cruise ships travel. To quote, "defer all cruise ship travel worldwide." Spokesperson Frizzle says Carnival wasn't under any legal obligation to follow the CDC's advice. Quote, "The advisory is not an edict," he says. And as of publication of this article, Carnival still had 2 of its 100 ships at sea. As I mentioned, cruises not only are full of old people who are at risk, but you know they're tiny confined spaces where like things like norovirus are already just breaking out everywhere. Also notable is a lot of cruise lines are registered overseas, or possibly all of them. And so I think Carnival is based in Panama, so there is bipartisan support to make sure that they don't get any bailout money because they don't pay U.S. taxes.
Wow.
Something
Everything about that is bad. Everything they did is bad. Everything you just said is bad and upsetting. I never have wanted to go on a cruise in my entire life. And this is just confirmed that I never want to go on a cruise ever.
Yeah.
It's horrifying.
There's 2 more quick things. Sorry, I'm just looking at my notes.
Yeah.
While the corona panic was happening in February, over 300 people got sick on a cruise with norovirus, that poop disease I was talking about, a lot of diarrhea. And then, of course, this was earlier, before corona, the poop cruise, where 4,000 people were stranded without power, AC, or working toilets. I'm sure you've all read about that. I'm just horrified of these things. Sorry, Survey, did you have something to say?
I mean, so I hope that the cruise industry completely collapses. I hope that we do not support them at all financially in any way. I hope that there are no cruises ever. I think they're terrible. They're horrible places. And
have you been on a cruise?
I've been on one cruise. I was 8 years old. I protested it very loudly.
Wow.
This was before I knew about the detrimental effects to the environment. I was just like, I feel like there are a lot of germs on the cruise.
And there are.
And my family is very, I mean, you know how people say like, oh, I have OCD, and they make it seem like it's like a thing. Like, no. My family has like diagnosable OCD, like literally every single person in my family.
Believe that.
So we went on this cruise and it was horrible. I mean, oh God, it was the worst experience of my life. And it was a very nice cruise too. Like, great ship, great everything. But I was still like, people are touching everything. I don't like that there's like a buffet of food. So many germs. Worst experience. Definitely.
It sounds like just hell. I don't like the idea of anywhere you can't run. Sorry, go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the cruise industry keeps saying things like, well, outbreaks happen in cities and we're functionally the size of the city, which is true. Cities, you have a place to run. And also, hopefully, like, people running cities aren't exclusively in it to make money and keep things hush-hush, but who knows. I also just want to point out, for Serby, Anthony Drosis said, but Serby, where will the elderly go to die?
Oh, well, wouldn't they go to the nation's cruise ship, South Florida? Florida is kind of shaped like a ship. It's mostly in the ocean. There's a lot of buffets. So to Anthony, I would just say probably just Florida, sadly. Ugh. I remember I was supposed to go on a cruise once in high school, but then I signed up for the SATs the weekend it was happening to tell my parents, oops, I couldn't go. So then I just stayed home for a week and had all my friends over and had like parties and stuff, but I wasn't that cool, so they weren't like fun parties. We like played video games and ate pizza. But then we had so much fun that I slept through the SATs, so my parents were a little pissed.
But this was back when you could like pay the extra like $20 to decide whether or not you wanted to keep your scores. Do you remember that? Or am I quite a bit older than you?
Well, I'm 17. Hell yeah, class of 2021, coming in hot. Yeah, I don't think we could do that, but I did take it once and just not take it. And when you don't show up at all, they don't give you like a 0, but they're not happy and they charge you money, and your parents are upset, as I would know as a 17-year-old that still interacts with my parents regularly. I mean, do we think with all this cruise stuff, I don't know, like, how does it... I want to say who goes on a cruise after this, but then my brain says to me, I know who goes on cruise. People that go on cruises will still want to go on cruises. Because, for example, none of us wanted to go on a cruise before this. There's a lot of people that did, and there's a lot of people that will after. Am I wrong?
Well, the article touches on that. They say that I think it was like 50% or something said that they'll still go back on a cruise, and rather than get a refund on cruises, they decided to take credit for a future cruise.
Oh, wow.
Probably that chick who wanted the ice cream and the ukulele concert.
I mean, if you're riding about
thinking.
cruises, you're probably just thinking like, listen, they can't stop a global pandemic. True. And I just was there wrong place at the wrong time, and like I didn't get sick, so whatever. Wow. Yeah. There's another thing about cruises that I find really interesting. I was listening to an interview about this guy who wrote this book called The Velvet Rope Economy. And it's kind of about like the business of being super rich. The businesses surrounding being super rich, like how the super rich have their own like terminal at the airport at LAX, so they can like skip the line of the plebes, or how they can go over traffic by taking helicopters. And one of the things they bring up is cruise ships versus airlines, because airlines, there's obviously that class divide. First class has this like sweet ass experience, and then economy is like a cattle car. And there's like a lot of resentment from it, and apparently it goes both ways. So like I obviously resent the people in their cushy seats getting like their cocktails served to them, and they also resent the people behind them, and so it's very visible. But the author brings up cruises because cruises work the exact opposite, where there's like the admiral level sort of restaurants that only the people who pay like the extra pricey tickets can get to, and like the luxury experience. And instead of being like, well, instead of like an angry kind of jealousy behind it, like there is on airplanes, there's a kind of like aspirational jealousy, like, man, I wish I could be there. And so I think the like whole thing is just fascinating.
Wow. I don't like it. I don't think anyone should do it. But I would love to hear, if anyone who listens to this has good cruise stories, I would love to hear those. And I'd also love to apologize. Oh, go ahead, Alex. Sorry.
Oh, no, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, much like Alec had to apologize for shutting up his dog farm, I now apologize for the lawn maintenance company that's decided today is the day to work directly outside my apartment. I do run a chain of lawn services in Southern California. and they are outside right now. Sorry about that. But get back to the cruise topic.
I was just going to say the one thing I've heard from a lot of people how they hate cruises, they don't like them, but I've heard cruises to Alaska are great, and I want someone to
those are supposed to be good,
or deny that. Just anyone.
I've heard that.
No, I've had that confirmed. I've also heard confirmed my mom and her friends did like a European riverboat cruise.
Sounds rad.
It's one of the cruise companies that sometimes has commercials after The Bachelor. That's how I know of it. And she said that was pretty good because it's like smaller. It's a chiller group, and you are on like a river rather than the horrifying sea. And like every day you get off in some other European town and walk around. So that doesn't sound so bad.
Yeah.
I've heard that one was like the Norwegian cruise that goes down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that one's really good. And the Alaska cruise.
Actually, now that we get into this, if any cruise line does want to sponsor us, we'll go on the cruise. We'll broadcast live from the ship every other day. We're going to bring a first podcast that's taken the sea. I think this is a good idea. I'm pretty into this. So
I'll document all my gastrointestinal symptoms, bowel movements, etc.
Burns, you have to wash your hands, though. Please, we got to make a contact.
He's the one giving everyone neurovirus.
He is.
No.
That's exactly what I was thinking when he's like, "Oh, I've never been on a cruise." I was like, "Lies. You're the one. You're the source."
Listen, I like a buffet, and if there's a buffet, I'm there, and I will try every item. I will mix every item. I will have dessert first and shrimp later. I don't care. That's what it's there for. It's pure culinary freedom. So now that we're all feeling gross and pitching ourselves to cruise lines, speaking of people telling us about cruise stories, we want to hear from you. We want to hear from you with your voices. We want to hear from you with your words. 1 second, I'm going to make my screen bigger so I can see all the information. But if you call us, I'll tell you how to call us. I'm going to give you some tips on if you call us. Our phone number is 213-534-8807. I'll say it again, 213-534-8807. Here's the thing. We want you to call. We want you to call real bad. But we also need you to keep it, I'm not going to say short, but I'm going to say relatively concise, because the system we use, this is not our fault, it cuts you off after a few minutes. So if you leave a really detailed, exciting, emotional, exploratory message, we're going to get cut off. We're not going to see the ending. It would be like not seeing the last 15 minutes of The Sixth Sense and being like, why does Bruce Willis just hang out with little kids? So sorry if you've never seen that movie, but you've had time. So do call us. But, I would say, let's aim for a minute. Let's aim for around a minute or less so we can hear the whole thing. If you're not a voice person, you can just email us, culturebinge@wisecrack.co. No M, culturebinge@wisecrack.co. Hit us up. Let us know what's going on with you. Let us know your cruise stories. Let us know if you're magical thinking. Let us know what you're going to do if you're in college right now. We'd love to hear that, whether you're a professor or a student or you just work on a campus in general. Let us know anything. And let us know if you're breeding dogs just like Alec is. So let's get into it. Who did we hear from this week? What do we got?
We going straight to emails?
Sure. Should we start with emails and go voicemail after?
Sure. All right. So the first email is from... We got one from Cassie. Hey, Culture Binge crew, in regards to the last episode, Alec towards the end of the podcast mentioned something to the effect of grocery store workers feeling more akin to captive than heroes, to which I would like to say thank you for making this known to the general audience. While it definitely is appreciated when people show us praise, it is important to remember that the job description never entailed being on the front lines of a global pandemic, especially considering my only options are unemployment or continue to put myself and my family at risk. To call us heroes feels like an invalidation of the medical professionals working tirelessly to put an end to the crisis, and at the end of the day applies more pressure than it relieves. It is also important to note that when you enter these essential businesses, they are not immune to the virus. There have been confirmed cases in my grocery store, as I'm sure there have been in others as well. Thank you so much, and I hope you all stay safe. Cassie, I'm sorry. Fucking sucks.
Yeah, it sucks. I'm glad that we got to hear that perspective, and I think it is important to know that, like, I've seen some well-intentioned people in grocery stores heap praise upon the people working there. And I talked to someone on Twitter about this the other day. It's kind of just like most of them would just rather have safe working conditions, get paid more. I know it's great to like cheer for people, but a lot of people are on minimum wage jobs out there risking their lives because they have to, and it sucks, and that's stupid. So I guess if you know anyone who works in a grocery store, just leave a bunch of money in their mailbox or something.
Yeah. Here's a hot take. Sorry, go ahead, Sylvia.
I hope that grocery stores, like corporations, mandate like gloves and like face masks, and you get to wash your hands like every 20 minutes there's like a plastic there's like a plastic covering between you and the customer. I hope that they get hazard pay, because I've been reading a lot that a lot of grocery stores are not allowing their workers to wear gloves or face masks or anything, and they just have to like interact with the public, and they're not allowed to wash their hands and things.
But that'll change, because all corporations are good, and I think that if a corporation is being less good, it'll get good because they're all inherently good and virtuous at a deep metaphysical level. But no, that's fucked up that some of them are doing that and putting their workers in horrible conditions. But Alec also has a hot take, so let's get spicy.
Oh, well, because we brought up
What's your
healthcare
take?
workers, obviously a lot of respect and mostly just like sympathy for what's happening to them right now. I fucking hate the clapping, and I'm sorry. It's just that I feel the same way about other sort of people who are considered heroes. Like, I want to support those people by giving them like personal protective equipment, raises, give them raises. Like, maybe like if there was like a website where I could like have them deliver like a hot meal or something, or like a bottle of booze. I don't know if that's the best idea. I would do all that stuff. Or similarly, like veterans, like give them free healthcare for the rest of their lives, make sure they don't go homeless, all that shit. I hate the hero shit. And it's also, I think, just a way to just like, it makes us feel good about these things instead of like, if we all spent the time we spent clapping by like angrily emailing our Congress members to like send them good personal protective equipment, it'd be better.
That's real. I do love the communal aspect of at 8 p.m. every night, knowing that I'm going to hear people screaming outside of my window, because in these days of isolation, you forget other people exist, but I feel that. Do we have any other emails?
Yeah. Well, there's also a comment in the live chat. As a nurse, I wouldn't say no to booze, ...
There you go. Buy drinks for essential workers right now. They need it. They're dealing with stress. Everyone deserves a drink, especially right now. So if you know someone that works that industry, buy them a drink.
Sorry, my last thing. I'm actually curious for nurses, because imagine if you were dealing with like a very traumatic situation involving a lot of death. Like, again, to use the soldier analogy, imagine you like just finished storming Normandy, and like 5 seconds later you step out and like people are just like clapping at you. Would you kind of just be like, please leave me alone? Maybe not, right? And maybe Normandy's not a great example, but just like to be surrounded by death, obviously you need support, but I feel like the cheers might be... I'm just curious. I want to know how actual healthcare workers are responding. I could be a curmudgeon.
I think you are a curmudgeon. Responses on Twitter. I've seen some doctors say like, "Oh, I really like it," and they've like filmed it and shown it on their feed. And I've seen others that are just like, "I don't care. Like, thank you, but I don't. That's not what I need right now. I need toilet paper and grocery delivery, which I can't get because I'm working at the hospital all day long." Yeah,
sorry for that.
Booze and toilet paper.
That tangent. But anyway, here's another email. This one is from Cole. Hey, Culture Binge crew. Just wanted to email regarding your discussion about the Peace Corps. The Peace Corps was, so for context, we talked, Serby's topic was about how the Peace Corps might be awful. This is back to Cole. The Peace Corps was a significant part of my upbringing because it's how my parents met. They were both volunteers in Namibia, where they started dating and fell in love and eventually got married. So sweet. This was in the early 90s. They've talked to me about how the problematic structure of the Peace Corps and how there is bizarrely very little oversight. While my dad was really good at running the program operations in Namibia, he rarely had any sort of contact with the actual organization. He mostly just made sure things were getting done and addressed any concerns the volunteers had. While they both cherished their time volunteering, they both agree that is emblematic of American exceptionalism and definitely has issues with being a white savior complex organization. But it did help my dad land a job at UNICEF, where he's doing actual humanitarian work, bringing health and educational resources to rural communities, and I'm proud of what he does. Love the pod. Love you guys. Thank you, Cole.
Love you,
Can you imagine? I love Cole. Can you imagine meeting his parents at a dinner party where he'd be like, "So, how'd you meet?" And the couple before is like, "We were at this happy hour, and I was trying to hit on this other woman, but I talked to her, and like, how did you guys meet?" "We were in the Peace Corps together." Changing the world, and we fell in love while we were doing that, but that's really great that you harassed someone at a bar, then married them. Sorry, I just like Cole's parents a lot. Any more emails?
Yeah, this is a little bit of a different perspective from Tyler. So Tyler, again, on this topic, Tyler says, I'm currently working with a nonprofit through AmeriCorps. We serve the homeless and financially insecure by providing housing and rental assistance. Contrary to Michael's bad experience, it has been going pretty well. Maybe it's because I like my supervisor in the first meeting and I knew we would get along. I'm also considering a Peace Corps tour. Thankfully, some groups are working to fix the whole white knight or the Peace Corps solution-driven approaches to development and assistance. Paul Polak, I haven't heard of this person, is one example of how to help people in developing countries by treating them as partners and customers instead of charity cases. Paul spent a lot of time getting to know people, what their problems were, and what solutions were locally feasible. He helped millions of poor farmers increase their incomes by developing locally, producing and selling low-cost drip irrigation systems and treadle pumps. I don't know what treadle pumps are.
Why not?
That sounds useful.
Wow.
Keep discussing great topics. Thank you so much. Thank you, Tyler.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Tyler. That's great. Thanks for that. I'm glad he's having a good AmeriCorps experience. I hope that my bad one was the exception.
We also got an update from Zach. Zach was the Alabama Essential employee making rugs and was like, I either can get the COVID or be on unemployment. Zach says, hello, Culture Binge crew once again. My employer only yesterday, the 8th of April, enforced mandatory face masks in the factories and a hazard pay raise. I'm a bit pessimistic by nature, so I suspect they only did this to save face because people were getting angry and threatening to quit. Rugs are essential to the corporate greed machine. My life is not. Things have not been great in Alabama during this outbreak, and we are among the states getting hit the hardest. So many people seem to be taking the if I ignore the problem, it will just go away option. Hope you are all doing well. Your ever essential rug peddler, Zach.
Oh, Zach.
Zach, stay safe. Sorry to hear that. Man, I hope they're throwing some money at you at least. That's rough. A rough
Can
scenario.
you send us a picture of your rugs?
What if
I don't want to see a picture of the rugs. I want to see a picture of you because you're who I care about, not the product you're being forced to make. Nice,
Well,
Serby.
these rugs are essential, though.
Are they?
I'm kidding.
Serby has. We can't. If she turns her camera, there's a pile of rugs she's just had delivered, and she ordered 10, but she's going to pick one, so the other 9 she's going to make someone then return to put as many people in harm's way as possible. That's what she told us. She didn't. Any more emails or is it voicemail time?
I'm not going to read it, but I just want to shout out Jim, who rules, who does like 3D laser cutting, puzzle making, and offered to send us some puzzles after Serby's very sad puzzle shortage. So thank you, Jim. I think she's supposed to email me today.
Jim, I will email you. We're so excited.
rad.
That's all we've been talking about for the past 2 weeks.
I have a lot of anxiety about what puzzle to get. But anyway, I think we have one voicemail.
I think that a legend of the podcast, a longtime supporter, fan, who goes by the name Dude Abides, called us, left a voicemail. The man himself speaks. What else is there to say? Let's hear it.
Hey, Wisecrackers. This is the Dude Abides calling in for the Culture Binge about the episode Why We Love Bad People. The idea came to me when I was looking at the video about the Martin Shkreli firefighter Theranos. The ideas about the folk devil. 2 ideas. One, I had a question about what happens when you add the idea about capitalism to personal passions, and sometimes how money can corrupt those passions. The second one is I think sometimes we identify with bad people, maybe because some ideas of shared experiences or some kind of mental issues or problems we'd all have at one point or another, and you can identify with the problems. However, we also see how sometimes they can get out of hand, and then they go south quick. You can leave me a comment or your ideas about this. I would love that. All right, thanks. Keep doing what you do. Love your show, guys. Bye-bye.
Yay, Dude Abides.
Wow. Thanks to Dude Abides. So he's referring to the bad people discussion that we got into via talking about our friend Joe Exotic. But I mean, I think something he says there about being sympathetic to bad people because we might relate to them. And I think some people did experience this. When you're watching Tiger King, we do know that this is someone who has felt alienated in his life. We know that Joe Exotic, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think he came out to his family, was kind of rejected by them initially. And I imagine when he was growing up, it couldn't have been easy to be an out person in Oklahoma. So I think there is a way we see someone like that. We see those vulnerabilities and we are sympathetic to them. The same way I think when you watch Making a Murderer, and you see the Stephen Avery character, his life has not seemed rad. He seems like someone that's gone through some shit, so we might sympathize with that. So I get what he's saying there. I think that's why it's probably maybe even easier to have empathy or like a Joe Exotic type as opposed to like a Martin Shkreli or like the Firefest guy, because with those people we're just like, oh, this is just some like rich douche bro who I don't feel for. But I'm just glad that the Dude Abides called. He could call anytime and talk about anything. I'm just glad to know that he's real and that he exists. So thank you so much for calling. I think, do you have any more voicemails? I think that was the only one, right?
I think that's it.
Great. So once again, thank you for writing. Thank you for calling. Culture Binge at wisecrack.co. No M, 213-534-8807. Well, just keep them under 3 minutes. Main thing with the calls, but please call. Please write us. Please subscribe. Please rate us. Please tell us who should play us in films, especially do that no matter what. So we'll be back in a couple weeks, but in the meantime, Serby, if people need more of you in their life, besides giving them your address, where can they find you?
You can tweet me at SurryPatel22.
You can do that, Alec. You know that the people need to find you. Where are you at?
I'm on Twitter at WisecrackAlec, and again on the Squanch podcast starting May 4th.
Yay!
Oh, it's so exciting. I'm at Michael O'Burns on Twitter, and then if you want to watch as well, I'll tweet about this. I'm running a twice a week comedy Twitch stream that you can come hang out on. It gets kind of absurd, so check that out. It's twitch.tv/GodseyandBurns. So that's all for this time. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Stay safe. Have fun in the meantime. This has been Culture Binge. You've been you. Thanks for listening.